Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. A little over a day or so ago, Naoya Inoue and Junto Nakatani were honored at the JBC Awards and teased at a 2026 super fight. The two best fighters in Japan took a significant step towards creating the biggest fight in the nation's rich boxing history. Inoue and Junto Nakatani made a gentleman's agreement to eventually meet in 2026, while both were honored at the 2024 JBC Japanese Boxing Commission Awards on Monday in Tokyo. The moment took place after the fighters accepted 2 awards each during the annual ceremony. Inoue, 29-0 with 26 KOs, was named JBC Fighter of the Year for the 7th consecutive time and 8th overall. His 6th round knockout of Luis Neri, 36-2 with 30 knockouts, was hailed as Japan's best fight of last year. Nakatani, 30-0 with 23 KOs, was bestowed with awards for Best Technique and Best Knockout of the Year. Inoue, a 4-weight champion and currently undisputed at Super Bantam, went above and beyond the usual acceptance speech after being named the nation's top fighter of the year. Instead, he turned to Nakatani, the unbeaten 3-weight champion and reigning WBC bantamweight champion, who was seated on stage, and dropped a friendly challenge. It turned out to be a special year. I want to make this year even better, said Inoue, after being honored for his stoppage wins over Neri and Doheny. I want to do the best I can this year for the domestic match that lots of fans and people around the world have been talking about. Mr. Nakatani, a year later at the Tokyo Dome, let's lift the mood around Japanese boxing together.
Challenge issue.
Nakatani smiled and replied, sure, let's do it. The bold move came after months of fans calling for the Japanese super fight, some going as far as to blame Inoue for the fight not yet taking place. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, as Inoue is universally recognized as rating among the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Boxing fans shouldn't get their hopes up yet. The two remain a division apart and have both slated their own separate goals for the year.
Nakatani has repeatedly expressed the boxing scene's desire to unify at bantam. The unbeaten 27-year-old was never afforded that opportunity at flyweight or junior bantam. He is fearful of outgrowing 118 before he gets the chance to face at least one other champion. Furthermore, the plan was never to race to 122 and immediately bump heads with Inoue.
I have to develop further, noted the 5'8" southpaw Nakatani, which is big for a 118-pound fighter. I'm looking to get wins in a more impactful manner. The good news for boxing fans is that by the time that day arrives, Inoue versus Nakatani could take place with a featherweight title at stake. Boxing scene has learned that Nakatani plans to take his frame up the scale all the way up to 126, though the preference remains to first unify at bantamweight. Inoue, who will turn 34 on April 10th, will stay put at junior featherweight for his next 2 fights. The Fighting Pride of Yokohama, Japan, will next defend his fully unified crown against San Antonio's Ramon Cardenas, 26-1 with 14 KOs, on May 4th at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. It will mark his first fight in the U.S. since 2021, though that journey will be one and done for now, because he's right back to Japan for a September fight with Mudajan Akhmadaliev. The most ambitious plans for Inoue's 2025 campaign call for a fourth fight, likely a shot at one of the reigning featherweight champions. Unbeaten champion Nick Ball, 22-0 with 1 draw and 13 knockouts, is the leading candidate, though a lot of ground needs to be covered before any of the involved parties can begin to entertain such a fight. Should Nakatani follow suit and claim a belt at featherweight relatively quickly into his move to that division, the all-Japanese super fight could come with at least 2 belts at stake. For now, the only competition between Inoue and Nakatani will be to lead the type of campaigns worthy of consideration for the 2025 JBC Fighter of the Year award.
Few passing thoughts. I like how respectful these guys are towards each other, as opposed to what we see from fighters in the West, America in particular. The overbearing guys, the brash talkers, the ones who spend more time talking than actually getting shit done.
In comparison with a 3-division champion like Junto or a 4-division, 2-time undisputed champion like Inoue, it seems like the guys around here, many of them, that are not as accomplished. They're just talking because they got a mouth. So when I see 2 esteemed professionals express this kind of respect, mutual respect towards each other, it is a breath of fresh air. But it's just like the article reads, you can't put the cart before the horse. A lot may take place before Inoue and Junto share the ring with each other. Inoue has every intention of keeping a very busy schedule this year.
The Cardenas fight in May, then the Mutajan Akhmadalia fight in September, then a proposed move to featherweight towards the end of the year in Saudi Arabia for Nick Ball, presumably. It's a lot.
Enough to where you start to wonder if Junto versus Inoue will ever happen, because what if Inoue loses? What then? You know it's the ambitious fighters that usually take a loss first. The brave ones, the ones that are willing to roll the dice and test themselves against the best available competition. That's Inoue.
That's how you become a 4-weight 2-time undisputed champion.
And they said he's coming up on 34 years old. I love the guy, make no mistake, but I feel like at some point he's gonna take a loss, and it's gonna be a bad loss.
Sometimes that's how it happens.
To where when you talk about a Junto Nakatani fight, all the way out there somewhere in 2026, after 3 upcoming fights already that are tentatively on the schedule, I'm not going to get excited. I'm not going to count my chickens before they've hatched. And what about Junto? Now, Junto is not as likely to take a loss in the next 12 months at 118 because most would agree he's the best in show at 118. You could give him very good odds against any of the champions that are there if he could get them in the ring. That's the problem for Junto. He's been WBC champion at 118 for a little over a year now, but where are the unification matches?
It almost feels like his move up to 122 is contingent upon him unifying at 118, because he's not in a hurry.
So, I mean, I love the idea of Inoue versus Nakatani, but we ain't there yet. We ain't nowhere near.
Upstairs at featherweight, Ring Magazine has learned that the World Boxing Council could order former champion Ray Vargas versus Bruce Shushu Carrington for the WBC featherweight world title if Stephen Fulton moves up to challenge O'Shaquie Foster for the WBC super featherweight world title.
The fight between Fulton and Foster is rumored to be going down on the undercard of Gervonta Davis versus Lamont Roach. I think that's how I heard it. So we'll get those answers shortly as to whether or not Stephen Fulton is actually going to do that. Though at the same time, there's a separate story and a separate rumor that Fulton won't be fighting Foster next. They'll be fighting Bruce Carrington. That the PBC and Top Rank have reportedly begun talks for Stephen Fulton to defend his title against Bruce Carrington.
These are just my thoughts. If I had to choose which one of those 2 guys Bruce ends up fighting, it would be Stephen Fulton over Ray Vargas. Mostly because it's better if you fight the actual champion than just fighting for a vacant title. It's better if you take on Stephen Fulton straight away than fighting Ray.
3-division champion in recess, Ray Vargas, that has not boxed since the Nick Ball fight in March of last year. In that way, the guy would be going into the Carrington fight with over a year of ring rust to have to shake off, which is less than ideal. What people want to see from Bruce now is a step up in class against a worthy adversary, because in spite of being a prospect, that just entered into contender status, he's 27 years old. He doesn't look it, but he's 27, which isn't that far off from 30. So for a guy that age, and a guy that size, at 126, they want things to get a bit more serious than what they've been seeing. He was in action this past weekend on the undercard of Mayer versus Ryan 2.
Stop the guy in 3 rounds. Make short work of him.
So now what people want the most from Bruce is a step up in class, because this is a guy who's mentioned an Inoue fight more than once. He's called out Inoue, and what people are asking themselves is, why is this guy who ain't even got no world title at 126, hasn't fought for one yet, why is he calling out Inoue?
Now, in fairness, Inoue's not the only guy that Bruce called out. He called out Nick Ball. He called out Stephen Fulton.
He's already called out one or some of the champions at his own weight, Stephen Fulton in particular, because Bruce is ranked number 1 with the World Boxing Council, and Stephen is the champion. Ray, we don't know when Ray's coming back. We don't know what Ray's been up to for the last 12 months.
I don't really want to see Bruce versus an inactive former champion. I want to see him against Stephen Fulton. This could be his breakout moment, his breakout win, if he can stop Stephen Fulton. And I think he's got the talent to do it, the firepower to do it, the freshness, the speed.
Story now is that Top Rank and the PBC are going to be working together a lot more moving forward in order to compete against Turki El Sheikh and his shows and what he's doing. That's the story, according to the Bob father.
So what you're talking about now with fights like Keyshawn Davis versus Edwin De Los Santos, Sebastian Fundora versus Xander Zayas, and of course, Stephen Fulton versus Bruce Carrington. The legitimacy of that claim will be measured against what fights they put together moving forward.
The ideal scenario for me is you do Fulton versus Carrington, and you have Ray Vargas fighting a tune-up fight on the undercard so that he gets the winner, because as a champion in recess, he's tantamount to a mandatory.
Bruce wins the fight. I think Bruce knocks out Stephen Fulton.
Stephen Fulton's never been a big puncher. He wasn't a big puncher at 122. He's not a big puncher now at 126. What he is a finesse fighting kind of fighter. He's a finesse fighter. Bruce is under no threat of being knocked out by Stephen Fulton, where the same is not true in reverse.
Bruce can punch. Bruce has power, and not just power, he's a little taller than Stephen Fulton, and a little longer, a little bigger.
He's a boxer. He's a boxer too, but a boxer with power and freshness. Lest we forget what usually happens when top-ranked fighters square off against PBC guys. The top-ranked guys usually win. So I go with Bruce to beat either Stephen or Ray, but if I had to pick which is next, I'd go with Stephen, because he's the champion, because he fought in the last 12 months.
Ray hasn't.
Give me Stephen Fulton versus Bruce Carrington, and if they make it, I'd go with Bruce. Bruce by way of knockout. Now let's see if the powers that be can deliver on that premise, that they're going to be working together more moving forward. Let's see it.
I know, he's been my favorite fighter for a long time now. But that photo's got a funny story, because I went up to him in the gym, because we were training in the same gym, and I just said, "Hey, Tank," and like he's got his bodyguards and all that, because he's pretty up. I was like, "Can I get a photo with you?" He literally just stared at me like this, and then if you can tell in the photo, when I got the photo, he just looked at the camera for a second, and then I was like, after everyone, I was like, I don't feel like he was that, like, obviously he's in camp, and they're like, no, he doesn't like white people. I was like, oh damn.
What's that old saying? Never meet your idols, because you're sure to be disappointed. I mean, I know that Taylor Robertson seems pretty cheesed about the whole thing, giving her account of events when she tried to take a selfie with a fighter that she's a fan of.
Piece of shit.
So I guess this is just another reason for me to not like Gervonta Davis, because he's a bigot. Because he's prejudiced, openly prejudiced. And some people have it in their head, they have some sort of self-defined immunity, diplomatic immunity.
Shut that bullshit up.
Care how many Dr. Umar videos you came across on YouTube, or whatever crappy books led you to the conclusion that you're not capable of the same behaviors as everybody else, you're just as guilty. But in the United States of America...
Is Dr. Umar really a doctor?
Yeah, the same way that Dr. Dre is a Dr. Pepper. But in the United States of America, you're entitled to your beliefs like you're entitled to your prejudices. However, when you're a public figure, that is something else. You paint yourself into a corner with that kind of behavior because as a public figure, you rely on public favor. That's what puts the money in your pocket, so that if you go as far as alienating a particular group,
that's a group of customers you lost.
It's a group that's now asking themselves after listening to that soundbite, what if the shoe were on the other foot? What if it were Gervonta that wanted a selfie with Taylor, and then it came out that Taylor doesn't like black fighters, as she doesn't like black people?
What if it were that way?
Well, I don't think people would be anywhere near as dismissive of the story as they're being now. But it's all right.
It's okay, because Gervonta's on borrowed time anyway.
It's just one more thing to add to the list. One more reason why I think Gervonta Davis is just a piece of shit. And the sooner he leaves the sport of boxing, the better.
They say that he's an icon. They say that he's the poster child for something. Yes, the poster child for ignorant pieces of shit.
I already thought that long before I heard this soundbite. Long before I caught wind of this story.
More reason to root against him?
You're entitled to your beliefs, whatever they might be, but so is everybody else. And the way that works out, since you don't like an entire group of people, that entire group of people is a group of people that is not supporting you. And who is? All those 120-pound guys on Twitter with their pants sagging, showing their dirty underwear? You think they're gonna pay $80 every time you fight? Then where have they been? The only time you ever did decent numbers was with Ryan Garcia, and that's because Ryan's fans, a good number of them, bought the fight. But as soon as he was out of the picture, so were those astronomical numbers.
And you say that, well, it's not like Ryan went on to do those numbers with any fight that he's had since then, but I'm not calling Ryan the face of boxing. You guys are calling Gervonta the face of boxing, not based on these numbers.
So how come Canelo sold more with an Edgar Berlanga fight than Gervonta sold with a Frank Martin fight or a Lamont Roach fight? How does it work?
I'll tell you how it works.
I'll tell you how it is. All of those guys that swear by Gervonta Davis on boxing Twitter or the YouTube boxing community, all of these guys that claim to love Gervonta Davis anywhere on social media are the same people that are stealing his fights. You see, you don't need to be clairvoyant to know that at a time where piracy is at an all-time high, the average person you speak to online is likely stealing.
Because piracy is at an all-time high. So in all likelihood, when you see a big Gervonta Davis fan, go on, ask him. Ask him if they bought the fight. Ask him to produce a receipt, because I can produce a receipt for all the pay-per-views I watch.
But I'll bet you these guys can't, and I'll bet you they won't. It's the funniest thing that Gervonta Davis doesn't like Caucasians, but you could use some of them to buy your fights. Since your guys ain't buying them, they're stealing them. Reminds me of the big hip-hop boom in the 90s and the early 2000s. You know that a lot of those rappers weren't making money off of the inner-city street kids. They were making...
Oh, the inner-city street kids were buying bootlegs, which the artists don't see any money from.
It was actually the kids in the suburbs, not the inner-city street kids, buying those albums at their local Virgin Megastore or buying concert tickets with all their buddies, all their friends.
That's where a lot of the money was coming from.
That demo, oh yes, that same demo that Gervonta Davis has so alienated, which is fine. You don't like those folks? You don't have to, but they don't have to like you either.
Pretty sure a lot of them already don't, based on all the other crap this kid's done.
I don't condone prejudice or bigotry of any kind from anyone towards any one group of people, any some group of people. It's the same as far as I'm concerned.
Who the hell have you been talking to that you think you're different?
Or that you're special? You're not. You're just a piece of shit. And you're on borrowed time.
Better win that Lamont Roach rematch, because if you don't, say bye-bye to that Jake Paul payday.
Pretty sure that was intended to be Gervonta Davis's retirement fund. You better win this time.